Welcome to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, and let us begin our discussion about subaltern perspective of Unit 6, in which we are going to talk about the contributions of Jyotirao Phule. We are going to talk about Baba Sahib Ambedkar and also David Hardiman. But first, let us try to understand what is actually meant by subaltern. So the concept or the word or the term subaltern has been presented and was coined by Antonio Gramsci. So initially it was used in reference to inferior ranks in army, but over a period of time it is being used to address to people belonging to subordinate or inferior status, inferior ranks, especially in the context of economic conditions, race, ethnicity, gender, caste, sexual orientation, especially focusing on the marginalization of the groups. And it is also way, subaltern perspective is also a way and approach to understand society from a below level, so that what is the impression, what is the understanding about the society of the people who are marginalized for various reasons. And in this context, it is becoming very important to contrast and compare that what subaltern perspective thinks about the society, how it understands society, and how the elitist perspective is understanding the society. So Gramsci, when he was using this particular term, he was intending to use it in a very, very broad manner. And especially when we try to understand from a sociological context, it became very, very popular in academic debates, especially after subaltern studies connected with the tribal movement and peasant insurgencies and rebellions which took place during the British period, during the colonial era. So, when uh, from Indian perspective, from Indian context, if we try to understand, basically the subaltern group is trying to consider the contributions which have been made by the tribal and peasants during the colonial period, especially as the subaltern classes, which has been, not very much acknowledged in Indian history. And also, the basic focus is an effort, it is an attempt to restore those kind of historical narratives and reconstruct people's politics and history, which has largely been ignored by the historians. And in this connection, we have very popular names like Baba Sahib Ambedkar, Mahatma Phule, Ranjit Guha, David Hardiman, and Baba Sahib Ambedkar, along with being the father of India's constitution, we all are familiar with his tremendous contribution during the freedom struggle, and also, very strongly protesting against all the evils connected with caste system. Similarly, Ranjit Guha, David Hardiman, they have also done a lot of sociological research. And when we talk about Mahatma Phule, and he has been one of the most prominent social reformers which India has seen. Now, when we try to focus on David Hardiman, what is he trying to explain about Indian society? Then Hardiman's very prominent study is revolving around Devi movement. Okay, so if you're focused mainly on the history of South Asia, and in his work, a lot of focus is also on colonial rule, impact on the rural society and their assertions. So, in his analysis of nationalism and independence, he is trying to help us to understand that how local power structures and nationalism went hand in hand. He's also trying to examine the role of local peasant activities and Adivasi assertions during the colonial time. Especially his area of study has been Western India. And he has used a lot of ethnographic and archival sources to analyze the movements, especially in Western India, to promote subaltern studies in India. And as I mentioned, he was trying to understand the various facets of Devi movement which took place in Gujarat around 1922-1923. So it was a kind of Devi movement was a kind of Adivasi movement which was led by tribal peasants against the moneylenders, landlords, and liquor shop owners. So what Hardiman is trying to tell us here is, especially in his article Adivasi Assertion in South Gujarat, the Devi movement, he's trying to explain the assertion of the Adivasis against the liquor dealers for the harmful effects of liquor on people of their particular community. So, very interesting study. And in those times, we can definitely imagine the kind of plight which people might have faced, which has been very appropriately put forth by David Hardy. So, the context of this Devi movement is the Colonial Abkari Act of 1878 banned all local manufacture of liquor and permitted a central distillery at the headquarter town of the district. So everything started with this particular act, and the liquor dealers, they used to pay very huge amount of money to the government to run the distilleries, in addition to license to sell the liquor to the tribal villages. So this kind of distribution of liquor, it definitely impacted the people belonging to lower caste, marginalized communities, especially the Adivasis. And Hardiman narrates the adverse effects in his particular article. And in 1922, in this context, that interesting movement, Devi movement, was initiated. So Hardiman is trying to explain us this Devi movement, and he finds in his particular study that an epidemic of smallpox broke in the coastal areas of Gujarat, especially in the fishermen communities, in the coastal fishermen communities. And this community people, they felt that the smallpox was caused by the goddess, and they need to satisfy the goddess to get rid of that epidemic. Usually, this kind of belief systems exist across the world, and especially even in India. So they started organizing various ceremonies. The fisher community, they started organizing various ceremonies to satisfy the deities and through shamans. And they very strongly followed the advice of the shamans, and on that particular advice, they started giving up all kinds of habits, including consumption of the liquor. So Devi movement started to be known as Salabai, and slowly the process of shamanism through human beings had spread in Adivasi villages, and they also started practicing shamanism. So in order to fulfill the demands of Devi, or the demands of the goddess, basically what was important is to refrain from drinking liquor or toddy and eating flesh and meat, along with having you should have regular bath, you have to maintain hygiene, and you have to refrain from drinking liquor, toddy, and eating flesh and meat. So people felt by doing this kind of practices, Devi will be satisfied and the epidemic of smallpox will be taken care. And because of this, there was a massive level boycott of the liquor shop owners. And this kind of assertions by the tribal communities, by the Adivasi communities, it actually impacted the liquor barons to a great extent. And Adivasis, in a way, Adivasis were also forced to get back to their habits of consuming liquor, but that was not successful. So David Hardiman, with the help of local narratives, memories, songs, as well as archival materials, he has examined that how Adivasis not only asserted against the moneylenders, liquor barons, but also they initiated anti-liquor movement. In fact, in India's social movements history, we will see several movements where communities, including in this case Adivasis in Andhra Pradesh, we will see anti-Iraq movement, which was basically led by women. So Indian social movement history definitely has several such interesting studies with regard to addressing the liquor movement. And even in the nationalist movement and social reformation we will see this contribution was there. And Hardiman also undertakes a detailed study of local areas in Kheda district. And these ethnographic accounts actually help us to understand that how Adivasis have been a very prominent force to make sure that their villages were liquor free. Now, friends, coming to Baba Saheb Ambedkar, he needs no introduction, right? In fact, he has been one of the most tallest figures when we talk about anti-caste movement or movements connected with abolishing untouchability and the entire legal perspective presented by Baba Saheb, and along with being the father of Indian Constitution, his writings on Indian economy are wonderful. And I encourage all my young friends, my scholars, to definitely also read about Baba Saheb's contributions on India's economy and how Indian economy has been shaped, what are the challenges and what is the future connected with Indian economy. So, very prominent political thinker, and during the early part of Indian national movement, where the caste system was not taken very seriously, his contribution has been phenomenal. He himself was born in a lower caste community, Mahar community, as you all are familiar, but he was very fortunate to receive education, and probably that was the most important turning point in the life of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. And he's also credited in the forming Bahishkrit Hitakarini Sabha in Bombay to promote Dalit interests and to resolve their problems. And he has also helped Dalits to claim equal status and equal opportunities along with other castes. So at a time where our social structure was so rigid because of the rigidity of the caste system, pioneers like Baba Saheb Ambedkar, social reformers like Baba Saheb, definitely have shaped India's history, India's historical path, and was a prominent force in fighting untouchability. So, prominent writings of Baba Saheb, the untouchables, who are they? Who were Shudras? Annihilation of caste. This is a mandatory read for every student of sociology and every person, because in India, caste system is so very prevalent everywhere, even in 2026. And with the politicization of the caste, it seems that caste is likely to continue for several more decades and centuries. That is why annihilation of caste is a mandatory read for every person. Then, according to Baba Saheb Ambedkar, subaltern communities are those which were discriminated by the dominant caste. And he has given a very significant understanding of Dalithood as a kind of life condition that characterizes exploitation, suppression, and marginalization of Dalit people by the social, economic, cultural, and political domination of the upper caste Brahminical ideology. So, major part here was connected with how to encounter the Brahminical ideology, which, in the view of several philosophers of those times, contributed to untouchability. And moreover, Baba Saheb is also giving us the concept and idea of what he calls as graded inequality. And he did not only consider caste as a natural division, but rather a category of social discrimination. So when we are being so rigid with the caste system, we are definitely contributing to hardcore discrimination for that matter. He is also differentiating between inequality and graded inequality. And inequality can be seen in various forms in terms of skin color, race, occupation, or work differences. And uh, in India, Baba Sahib is saying that there is a very different form of graded inequality where, except Shudras and untouchables, the rest enjoy privileges according to their hierarchical social status in the traditional social structure. So, this is a very pertinent observation by Baba Sahib Ambedkar. And he is also very critical of the working of the caste system and how several castes are socially excluded and discriminated. And he was very critical also of Gandhiji's idea of Varna and religious institutions having nothing to do with caste. Friends, you will find it very interesting and very important to study and compare views of Gandhiji and Ambedkar on caste system. I would really encourage and request you all to have a reading on these kind of issues to understand that both stalwarts, both scholars who fought against caste system, but still there are comparative differences between their approaches towards eradication of untouchability and caste system. And Ambedkar is also arguing that caste dissociates work from interest and it disconnects intelligence from manual labor. It denies the right to cultivate vital interest. It prevents mobilization. Very, very uh, pertinent point in this connection. So, as we discussed that Baba Saheb formed Bahishkrit Hitkarini Sabha to register protest against atrocities on Dalits by upper caste. So, basically, the motto of this Sabha was to educate, organize, and agitate. Three very powerful terms associated with Baba Saheb's ideologies. And here the focus is also on self awakening. How do you address the concept of self awakening? And he also has traced the origin of caste system and its ideology of discrimination and said that sacred Hindu manuscripts like Manu Smriti have legitimized caste oppression. And on 25th December of 1927, Manu Smriti was burned by Baba Saheb as a step towards a great struggle, Mahasangharsh, and make satyagraha to negate the mythological basis of caste hierarchy and untouchability. Now, with specific reference to Baba Saheb's orientation on subaltern perspective, it is very important to say at this stage that voices from below cannot be missed and ignored, especially in a country like India, where caste system has been a very, very strong force. Well, let us also try to understand what has been the contributions of very popular name Jyotiba Phule, Mahatma Phule, who was born in a garden family, Mali family of Pune in 1827. So the Malis belonged to Shudra Varna and were placed immediately below the peasant caste of Maratha Kumbis of Maharashtra state. So we will see that across India, the caste hierarchies, the caste placements are also very, very diversified. Mahatma Phule was educated at Marathi school, and in 1848, Mahatma Phule began his work as a social reformer who was specially interested in education of low caste boys and girls when he started a school for girls of low and untouchable castes. So Mahatma Phule and his wife Savitri Bai Phule. Savitri Bai Phule, as you are familiar, friends, is a pioneer of promoting women's education, girls' education in the times where girls' education was considered such a strong taboo in Indian society. And then Mahatma Phule is credited with opening schools for the purpose of girls' education, and he gradually retired in 1858 from the management of these schools and he entered into a wider spectrum of social reforms and he started strongly supporting widow remarriages. As you all know, during those times, there was a kind of a ban on widow remarriages and the social status of widows were really very, very bad and very, very challenging. In this kind of a situation, Mahatma Phule came up that widow remarriages must be encouraged and he started supporting it. He also published a book on caste system in 1865 and Satya Shodhak Samaj was established in 1873 by Mahatma Phule and his colleagues to organize a lower caste against Hindu social order based on Varna and caste. Moreover, Phule wanted that British government must abolish, in a way, like, abolish the Brahmin Kulkarni's position and the post of village headman, Patil, filled on the basis, and it should be filled on the basis of merit, not on the basis of caste. Then Phule would have liked the British government to put an end to Balutedari system, which was connected with caste-specific occupations in villages. So he also fought to ensure that this kind of system is terminated, and he believed that British officers would relatively take a kind of an impartial view with regard to the caste system, and he basically felt that education has actually did not percolate down. It has not gone to the lower stratas of the society, because if it education is going to the lower stratas of the society, it would definitely make people politically and socially more conscious. Then, proceeding further, he is very clear that all men and women are equal before law, as concerned about not only Shudras but also Ati Shudras. He advocated that lower caste and untouchables should organize against the dominance and strive for an egalitarian society. He definitely is encouraging a kind of a protest and fight against the caste domination, and that is why Baba Saheb regarded Mahatma Phule as his guru. And Mahatma Phule attacked the customs and practices connected with child marriages, marriages of the young girls with very old men, polygamy. He also, was working against prostitution, harassment of widows, and he advised Shudra peasants not to have more than one wife, because polygamy was happening in those days, and he strongly said that Shudra peasants should refrain from having two wives. And he is also very strongly putting forth the idea in those days. Imagine that equal status to women in marriage is very, very important. And he was constantly visualizing that women should have equal status in marriage, family, education, and religion. And in some context, he is also providing a superior status to women in many, many aspects. Now, apart from these things, you will be very surprised to know that Mahatma Phule also addressed several issues connected with agriculture. So, the size of the population, definitely dependent on the agriculture, had increased, and farmers who were having small pieces of land, they used to make their living on fruits, flowers, fodder, grass, and wood from nearby forest. And what did the new government did? They started the Department of Forest, which covered all hills, valleys, wastelands, grazing grounds, and as a result of which farmers' livelihoods became a great difficulty. So British officers used to take a lot of land taxes. Moneylenders were there to exploit the people who were dependent on these kind of natural resources, and definitely because of high levels of poverty and dependence and interference of the officers and money lenders, the problem of indebtedness started increasing drastically, and that also contributed to unemployment. So he said that the problem can definitely be solved. And Pule is suggesting construction of bunds, tanks, and dams so that sufficient water was made available to farms, which will definitely facilitate a better farming. And he wanted the government to take up such kind of schemes such as soil conservation, animal breeding, and teaching of modern techniques of farming, and holding exhibitions of agriculture annually. So imagine these kind of ideas were presented by Mahatma Phule decades back and which are very, very pertinent even today. So he was saying that unless and until agriculture was made profitable, the agricultural banks which were talked about in those days would not succeed. And he also said that the burden on the farmers should definitely be decreased. And after paying the land cess and local funds, each person in a farmer's family was left with less than 3 rupees for a month, when an ordinary Brahmin or British officer used to get 15 rupees in a month. So definitely there was huge gap between the whatever was left with the farmer family, with the peasant, and whatever was left with the British officer. And it is very interesting to discuss that Mahatma Phule said that there is no intermediary between the devotee and God. Usually, priests are considered as, the mediator between the devotee and God, and we feel that through priests, our wishes is communicated to God. But Mahatma Phule said that God and devotee need no intermediaries between. And he visualized Sarvajanik Satya Dharma, public true religion, to take place of Hinduism. And though he dismissed Hinduism altogether, he did not reject the very idea of religion or dharma. See, probably because of the caste system or the untouchability practices prevalent, which were associated with Hinduism as a religion, this kind of view is quite understandable. But definitely, he is very strongly putting forth the idea of dharma. Though we have written on the slide religion or dharma, but I would definitely like to tell to my learners here that dharma is sense of righteousness. Religion and dharma, they are not synonymous terms. This stands rectified. I request you to kindly rectify this. Dharma is a sense of righteousness, right? And irrespective of whatever religion you're following, that sense of righteousness is very, very important. And Mahatma Phule was trying to put a universal religion based on principles of liberty and equality. And his very popular Sarvajanik Satya Dharma put emphasis on truth seeking without the aid of any guru or text. His religious ideas were definitely influenced by Christianity, but he never advocated for conversion. So, friends, in this particular unit, we have discussed three very prominent, pertinent philosophers and sociologists and researchers, especially when we talk about Mahatma Phule and Baba Saheb Ambedkar. They were very prominent social philosophers and pioneers who shaped up the Indian society and put their foot forward very firmly to fight all the evils connected with caste system. And when we talk about David Hardiman, through his research orientation, he tried to present a very interesting perspective through Devi women. So I hope, friends, you have enjoyed this particular lesson. But until and unless we do more reading, we don't explore things on our own, it is very difficult to get a grip on such a diversified perspective. So, subaltern perspective is trying to understand Indian society from the point of view of the marginalized communities. And this is very important for us to understand. So, as I always tell in all my classes, we have to explore more, we have to do research more, and we have to understand the constantly changing dynamics of Indian society. So, friends, you all can reach out to me through Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. My name is Dr. Vinita Pandey from Department of Sociology, Veeranari Chakalya Yellama Women's University, which was popularly known as Koti Women's College. So you can reach out to me. Till then, happy learning, happy exploring, happy research. Bye-bye. Take care.